and welcome to the Sober Freedom Podcast. I'm Crystal.
And I'm Lisa.
And we're here to share our experiences of going alcohol-free and the freedom that it brings, in the hope that it might inspire and support you in your journey.
Hello and welcome back to the Sober Freedom Podcast. We're joined again for the second part of our episode with Kat. So Kat, let's pick up where we left off from the last episode. So you just found yoga.
Yeah, what a big statement. I just found yoga. I was researching alternative therapies, alternative treatments for addiction, for breaking habits, for mental health, for depression, and I came across yoga. Okay. Yep. I didn't come from a family that really explored alternative therapies or anything like that. We've talked quite a lot about drinking culture and the part that played. So for me, this was a really new thing, a big, portal opened to this new world. And I was quite desperate for whatever it took for me to try and change the destructive habits that I had. And I guess the patterns that I was seeing within my family and the pain that my own sister was going through as she was struggling with her alcoholism. And I felt that there was a pattern there within us as well. So I could also identify that I was attracting, which we talked about previously, the same sort of relationships. I was no angel in those either, just to put that out there. So I felt I needed something very radical to change within myself. And having done that research, I thought I'm going to take the first step. So I booked myself into my first yoga class, which probably, it just sounds so normal now, doesn't it? But 10 years ago, it was different, wasn't it?
It felt like quite a big deal to be doing
and it's not
that.
as popular as it is now or normalised. And, it wasn't all over Instagram the way it is now. I remember just feeling so nervous going into that class. I went in and just saw some very scantily clad people as well. Yoga was quite different 10 years ago as well.
Right.
And it just felt really weird and kind of cult-like.
Was it, what type of yoga was it?
So it was Bikram that I went to. But that was a huge step to me. That was a huge step, booking that class and going on whatever night of the week it was, because it meant I was going somewhere else, somewhere different. I remember finishing the class and feeling really euphoric. That's probably the only way to describe it. And thinking, wow, that was really weird. But I feel strangely high. And leaving thinking, but I haven't drank anything or taken anything. And I went home. I'm guessing I was able to sleep better that night because I booked another class and I went back. There were a few things that I thought, what am I doing? This feels really weird. These people are just talking at me and I'm just doing the movements, doing this strange breath work. But I carried on. There was something that made me feel different. And that something was that feeling of release, of euphoria. And you can't buy that anywhere else. You won't get that same feeling from a bottle of wine, will you? You'll still have the after effects the next day, the hangover the next day. But I didn't feel that the next day. The next day I still felt good and I felt relieved and I felt happy. So I just carried on going. That was really the beginning of the new journey for me. It didn't completely take me away from drinking. If people asked me to go out for a drink, I did still go.
Yeah.
But I was now cultivating a new habit. I didn't know that at the time, but it was going to replace those other bad habits. And if you know anything about habits, you need something new to replace the old. That's kind of from the research that I've done and what I've seen. And it needs to become automated in a way where it becomes easy so that you can go to that thing instead of the bad thing that you don't want to do anymore. Luckily, I was able to do that and keep going. And that led me to, I guess, a place where I was more aware of self-care, more aware of the harm that I had been doing to myself. I just became more conscious of the situation that I was in and that it wasn't normal. What I had just experienced with my family, what we were going through, because a lot of the time we felt like that was, that's just normal, that's just what happens.
Yeah, I suppose maybe the yoga aspect of it allowed you that mental space to detach and actually reflect on what had actually been going on. Whereas before, that would have been, drink that away. Whereas now you had this space, you had this thinking time, you had this quietness, I suppose.
Yeah.
To be able to analyse exactly what had happened to you, what you'd been through.
Yeah, and there was a release, and, it helps you to heal. How often do you get a quiet minute to yourselves? And it helps you to deal with trauma. There are a lot of benefits to it, but you have to do it to be able to experience those benefits. It's physiological. So you have to do it. You have to do the work. So it was step after step after step. It was showing up to a class instead of going to the bar. It was committing to that a week in advance, which is something I would never have done before, and saying, okay, yeah, I'll be there next week. I would never have been able to make that commitment before. And that was a new person coming out.
Was it you were sort of intentionally planning that in as a barrier to going out drinking?
Yeah, because I was feeling the changes physiologically. My head was starting to feel clearer. I was drinking less and turning to go into a class more. And I was able to make more conscious choices. But at that same time, that journey for me, as I began to make more conscious choices and go that way, I could see that that wasn't happening for my sister. So she still was on that path of alcohol dependency that was slowly eroding her life. The pain was still there for me, very much so, and the guilt was still there for me. I just felt at a complete loss. And I think my parents did too. And it's really hard to explain how destructive it can be in families when you're arguing about different ways to manage that. And maybe you think that one person is an enabler. And then at times, I hold my hands up, I went down the very tough love route of, okay, we've done everything we can. Now we have to just tell her to stop and don't give her this and don't do that. It was very black and white to me at one point. But I think that was a way for me to deal with the pain and the anger that I felt, because I saw it as selfishness. But as I was dealing with those things, I did feel compelled to do something for myself, which sounds selfish, but I felt like I had to take that path. So it really took 3 years of me continuously showing up to the point where then I was just going to classes. I guess I became that annoying, obsessed yoga person. And I remember my mum saying, I think she's been brainwashed, because they didn't understand it. They're from a different generation. Yeah. They didn't know what I was doing. They just knew I kept going to this class and I seemed to be physically better. I seemed to be, meditating, doing breath work and saying no to drinks, not all the drinks, but some of the drinks. And I seemed to have something else going on in my life apart from the drama, the stress, the problem, and the same cycle that I always had. I'd created something else.
I can definitely see your parents' perspective in a sense that they are in that day-to-day living your sister's experience to a certain degree. You've been able to detach yourself. You've had the geographical change, which we've spoken about, but also a kind of enlightenment as well. Since doing yoga, it'd allow you time, it'd allow you mental space, and then ultimately clarity around the situation, to see the situation for what it is. Your parents and your family have not had that experience, so maybe to them you were so extreme, like, oh, I think she's being brainwashed. It's like, no, I've just been able to step away, and each time I've been able to step away more and kind of see things from this perspective rather than in it.
Yeah.
So although you might say, it's selfish of you, actually it's better for you. It's better for your sister, because otherwise she's not getting a different perspective, not getting a different kind of angle on help towards her situation. And your family also, it's just that it was so alien to them. They're suffering, you're also suffering, your sisters, everybody's suffering, but you're all kind of trying to deal with it in your different ways.
And I think we've touched on it a bit before as well, saying drinking alcohol to cope with these stressful, hard situations is so normalised that when you become maybe really intense or maybe a bit extreme with a healthy habit such as exercising, it shocks people, because it's just not the norm, really.
Yeah, and they don't see you as that person. You've created new habits, which sometimes can alienate other people and make them feel strange and uncomfortable. But you have to get uncomfortable to be able to create new things and new patterns. And everybody is, we're all wired with different patterns in our head. And to rewire those things, you have to create a new habit and a new pattern. It's the only way it works. For me, when I started to research it, I saw studies. And one of them was that they did a study on people who were depressed, and they got them to do 6 weeks of yoga. And half of the group were on antidepressants and the other half weren't. By the end of the 6-week trial, the group that had continuously done the yoga all came off their antidepressants. There's another study, which is the Rat Park study, which I think I've mentioned before, which is where it was a psychiatric study where scientists took rats and they put a group of rats in isolation. They gave them 2 bottles, one bottle which was plain water, another bottle which was laced with heroin. They took another group of rats and put them in a social environment with other rats. Okay, so Group A, they were rats kept inside isolation. Group B were rats with friends.
Company.
They put toys in there. They were able to hang out, do different things. And they put the same 2 bottles. And Group A, the rats who were in isolation, continued to drink the water that was laced with the heroin because it gave them the hit. Group B, the rats that were able to socialise, didn't go back to it and they didn't drink it to the extent where they died.
Yeah.
And I think it shows that having social connections, having the right environmental factors, and also being able to make changes, it is hard, but isolation can drive people to do things, that are really harmful to their health and not feeling connection. And for me, I felt isolated in my situation and I needed to find new connections and a new pattern and a new way. So when I finally took that flight and went over to India and did that training, yes, it felt crazy. Yes, I was sat there at 5 a.m. doing holotropic breath work and, tears coming out of me and sweat, all of that. But I came back and I had shedded a lot. I'd shedded a lot of the past and a lot of the pain and was starting to see things differently and recognise my own destructive patterns even more so. Did it mean that I was any less embroiled in my family problems and what was happening in terms of my sister's alcohol dependency? No,
So
it didn't.
How long had you been away for?
So that was only 5 weeks of intensive training.
Yoga training.
So you go, you train from like 5 a.m. till 7 p.m. You study philosophy, breath work, meditation. It's completely alcohol free. And that's what you do. And if it's just a classic example of the environment, if you're in that day in, day out, surrounded by other people, I was able to do that for those 5 weeks, which meant I had already created a new pattern and it was long enough for it to be embedded in my system. So when I came back, I was able to carry on with that.
No alcohol at that point then, or?
Well, this is the thing. So then you come back. You're back in Manchester surrounded by bars and people who want to go out. So I didn't have a different friendship group. I had the same friends that I came back to. So I was carrying on doing the yoga and the meditation, coming back with this great sense of purpose, but then the same temptations being thrown at me. I made mistakes. I fell off the wagon many, many times. And it made me realise how hard it must be if you're somebody who doesn't have tools to help them in life. Yeah. If you don't have fitness, if you don't have, meditation, breathwork, or just journal
support network as well.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah. And I think just had that moment where I thought, okay, I'm going to carry on doing what I'm doing because there must be a lot of people out there who need help, who aren't talking about how they're feeling, aren't vocalising their problems, maybe don't even have the opportunity. So I carried on teaching with that purpose. That is still why I do it today. Now I try and work with kids to teach it from quite a young age so that children have those tools from a younger age because I didn't have them. And if I had it probably would have helped me a whole lot more. And I guess our generation, it probably would have helped us a lot more. It probably would have helped my sister. Do I feel responsible for not helping her more? I do. Still to this day. I did try to pass on some of what I'd learned to her. I guess by that stage, we were so far gone in terms of her addiction that it was hard to see how it could make a difference. And I think the only way it would have made a difference was if I had have stayed there with her 24/7. That probably, that wasn't possible. Not probably, it just wasn't.
It's hard. I mean, obviously it's hard and you might feel that way, but if nothing was changing, your presence with her might have been a comfort, but do you think it would have
But this is what happens this is what happens when you have an addict. You have guilt, you have responsibility. You always feel
could have done
like responsible for that person, or like you can fix it. Right up until the end, I thought there was always a chance. There's always just that 1% of hope that it'll turn around. And when I was teaching yoga, sometimes I felt a lot of shame because it felt like I was harbouring a secret, because I had a sister who was an alcoholic, and how could I not even help her? How could I not help her change her life? That was honestly how I felt. How was that happening? But I carried on because it's in my heart that I believe that we can help people with breathwork and meditation, because I've done it. I have felt it in my own body, and I've done the work, and I don't drink alcohol or take drugs or have any kind of dependency on antidepressants or anything like that now. So because I've put myself through all of that, I'm not saying it worked for everybody, I've done the work, so I know it can help people, whether it's a small scale or larger scale, but that's why I do it. But I think when we got probably like 3 years in, then we're coming up to around COVID, and that was, I guess, a challenging time for everybody, wasn't it? So, we're coming up to a really difficult point, chapter we're all about to enter into, and they tell us that we can't teach classes in person anymore, that we have to go to online. And I had just found out I was pregnant, and I honestly couldn't believe it, that we were about to go into a shutdown, and I had just found out I was pregnant. However, in a lot of ways, it helped me because I was able to, I guess, really just focus on being pregnant and not having to go out to places in the same way that we would have been expected to. And I was able to teach online. I didn't see what was coming in terms of how it would change the drinking behaviours of people and our society in general. The only way I can really describe it is you already think you've hit your worst point with somebody, and then you start to see it physically. Because I couldn't go over to see them as often, and because I was pregnant, I wasn't drinking at all then. And that was probably the point in my life where I leaned the most into meditation and breath work to help me find my calm, to help me really tell my nervous system to calm down, to really take my focus inward, because I really needed that. I was in a situation where I couldn't see my family. I was pregnant, and this, what I thought we had hit the worst, was actually now the situation was getting even worse. So I don't know how you two felt during COVID. How were you?
Well, I was still drinking at that point, and absolutely, I had two young children, but I wasn't working because I'd finished my employed job to set up my own business. So I found myself at home with two young children, which was good that I didn't have the added pressure of a job, but it was a beautiful hot summer. My drinking absolutely went through the roof, and with my partner as well. It'd be like, get the beers open in the afternoon. There was less pressure for work. He's a gardener, so like he could sort of please himself a bit. We were drinking, so much more. And it had a huge impact. And I think that's the same for so many people. People were like panic buying. We must have alcohol in this time. Yeah, well, and in society all around, that seemed to be what people were doing in my peer group.
Yeah, I think you saw a lot of... I was sober at that point, so it didn't affect me in that sense, but I think you saw a rise in a lot of people home drinking out of boredom more than anything, I think.
And not
boredom,
having to be
the
up and
weather was
active.
great. It was like God was saying, I'm going to keep you indoors, but say what, you can go out for a little bit. Check this sun. It was like, it was the saving grace of that time, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. So the bars weren't open. People were able to order alcohol to their homes. I guess if you were already someone with a problem, and then you could get unlimited alcohol unchecked to your home and batten down, the shutters, then that problem was going to just spiral.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. It's probably the point where I saw the most drastic change in her. And I thought, okay, I think now this is irreversible, which is, it was really crushing to see. But being on that journey to becoming a new mum as well, I just, had to focus on the tools that I had to help me through. For being pregnant, there's quite a lot of pressure, I guess, around that time as well, being in isolation and you just want to have, a healthy baby. And I didn't know what was going to happen with the hospital situation.
It must have been terrifying, really.
It was hard, yeah. So I started to teach online to other pregnant mums, so that helped me find a community there and to help them. And then I reached a point where I was probably like due to have my son. And then I just got a call basically saying like she was in a very difficult situation again, that the medication wasn't working. So sometimes with addicts, they prescribe them certain medications to stop them from drinking, which makes them sick. But they don't always take the medication so that then they can have a drink, or they'll drink anyway.
Right.
And this is really what we're dealing with, a very far advanced addiction by this stage. And I think you just either lean so far into yourself in terms of hope, which is what I did, and in terms of, my spirituality and the tools that I had, then it just got to the point where I thought, okay, I have to just carry on. I'll carry on with my purpose. I'll carry on teaching to come out the other side of this. So I had my son, and that was joyous and wonderful and all of those things, but I was still in COVID. So that was quite different, being a new mom in that situation. And then again, we were on probably that last 6 to 9 months, year of COVID, we were gradually coming out of it. And it didn't look like it was going to get any better with her. And I then think we got probably into the first year where I was able to introduce her to him a few times. And we were definitely on that last part of her life, which was really quite obvious from her appearance and from the way she was. That was really hard for me to accept. I felt like I had failed as a sister.
Okay.
I felt like I had failed as someone who works in wellness. Give me a minute.
Okay, take your time. Take your time. It's a going through these memories again can be like, brings back those really, really intense feelings. I think it's actually interesting to hear that you feel guilty, or you felt guilty about that, because essentially we all know that addiction is a disease. Essentially it's a disease. So it's kind of, in another perspective, you blaming yourself for somebody else getting cancer and you not being able to cure it. You are one woman. Okay, you have knowledge about wellness. You have knowledge about how to make people feel better and bring people out of a difficult situation, but you can't cure disease. Okay,
you can't cure disease.
No. And these strategies that you can employ to help and support your sister, but ultimately it is a disease. It's a disease of the mind. It's a physiological disease. So ultimately there's only so much you can do. And if you know that you were in your presence with her, trying to help her, trying to support her, trying to bring her back to whatever capacity she could function as your sister, then as tough as it is, the reality is that's the only thing you could do at that point. The only thing, and the only thing that anyone can do, because it is a disease.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, I mean, I carry that with me probably most days. But I had to reach a point where I had to accept that I couldn't fix that situation, and that I had to give myself a chance of a new life, to live with a purpose myself. Because if I didn't find that, and I already knew those patterns, I said earlier, I'm not really sure whether I would be here today. And I think we knew as a family, and it was so painful to see. So when I did get the final call, hospital, the medics, the doctors, they can only do so much when you're that far advanced. You won't be given a liver transplant if you've been drinking. You have to be dry for a certain amount of time, and it doesn't matter how much you plead with them.
Yeah.
They won't do it.
And they would need to find the right donor and all of that as well.
So it didn't matter that I, would beg, and it didn't matter. That part was gone. And you're at a stage where you have to accept or just somehow exist through what is happening. Watching someone leave this earth in that way is probably one of the saddest, hardest things, and I guess most harrowing things that I've ever seen, because you just wouldn't wish that upon anyone. But the thing is, nobody thinks it's ever going to happen to them. Nobody thinks, like, I'm going to end up an alcoholic, an addict, with just that one drink. It's a spiral, it's a road that continues. And as we mentioned earlier, there are root causes and problems. I do feel a sense of responsibility now to be able to talk about alcoholism in a more open way, to overcome the stigma and the shame that comes with it. Because there are many people during the COVID pandemic who were functioning alcoholics. And the stats, if you look at studies, another study from Gov UK, they said that alcohol-related liver disease increased by 13.5% from 2020, and it carried on increasing. So the cost to the NHS for alcohol-related liver disease and problems just kept increasing steadily.
Is it still on that trajectory?
It never went down because it increased so much that it never really went back down. So those people who already had alcohol dependency issues, that just increased. And then when the bars opened, they were carrying on drinking at home and then now able to go back out to the bars to drink. So that problem, it was magnified, wasn't it? And it was intensified. And I think that was really the final straw for us. Nobody could keep check, really, of what she was doing in that way. Care workers weren't able to come in and check in. Again, when you're isolated in that way, you're at home day to day. And I think it's really just probably the most heartbreaking thing to see a mother go through, to lose their child to alcoholism, because you never think it'll happen to you. The biggest, hardest thing I've had to accept is something that I said earlier, is I couldn't fix it. But somehow, for 10 years, I thought I could.
That's a lot of responsibility that you're taking on yourself there, for your, on behalf of your sister. And, I think from listening to you, there were so many other people involved in her story, and it sounds like you're taking on a huge amount of that weight yourself. But it's not one person's responsibility in this situation, and everyone was trying their best, weren't they?
Yeah. And having to say goodbye in that way and seeing the damage that alcohol does when it's at that extreme level, I mean, it's terrifying. I remember afterwards just having someone ask me to go to a bar, and we went into a bar. I mean, I don't think I was really in my own body, when you're there, but you're not there. And I remember just walking in and looking around and feeling like I'd been kicked in the stomach, because I saw alcohol in such a different way after that I couldn't unsee it. And instead of seeing it as, people are just relaxing, I started to see it as they're drinking away their problems. They're drinking to forget. He's drinking away the pain. She was drinking away that. And it was almost like voices in my head, which probably makes me sound crazy, but I started to see it completely differently.
Your exposure to alcohol has been completely different to a lot of the people that were in there, just, enjoying a drink.
Of course,
relaxing, but your experience of it at that point had been so poor.
Yeah.
That's I think that's quite normal.
Yeah. And it must have been hard to be my friend at that point because I really went, I mean, I had to go very, very deep into myself. I was dealing with a lot of trauma. I was carrying a lot of that. And that was really when I started just saying, no, I'm not going to go to the bar. I won't be drinking, ever again. For me, that was it. That switch had been turned off completely. And I think because some of the people who were around me, it hadn't happened to them. Maybe they didn't understand. And it did cause some problems. It did cause some, I guess, like the end of friendships because I was dealing with such high trauma and the loss of someone to alcoholism that I felt like they could never understand. And I carried anger and bitterness about it. But there's always a way through, isn't there? And I think if you find the right people. And for me, that was the point where I had to turn to other things. So I needed to find some support, some people who I could speak honestly about alcoholism without shame. So that was when I reached out to Alcohol Change UK, who I'm now a champion for. And they listened to me, just let me cry, let me just be in that space with other people who had alcohol problems or alcohol dependency related problems in their families. And it made me feel normal because then some of those people were dealing with quite complex situations as well. And I didn't feel like I was the only one anymore. Yeah. You can probably hear me breathe more deeply now. I felt like I could just let that weight go a bit and that it wasn't my fault. They asked me to share my experience, write a blog. They asked me to teach yoga online for them. And then we're exploring me teaching yoga to people who have alcohol dependency issues to help them look after their wellness better. So we're doing that together in the future. And then they asked me to run the Great Manchester Half Marathon, which I'm not a runner, but do you know what? I said yes.
Who is?
And well, someone in your studio is definitely a runner. But I said yes because if I can take the saddest, hardest thing in my whole life and turn it into a positive thing for her, then that's what I needed to do. I'm doing it in memory of her and I'm doing it for them to help them, bring awareness to what they do. They help to change laws around alcohol. They challenge things around alcohol. And they bring up big questions around alcohol, like why is alcohol the only thing that doesn't have a mandatory warning label on it, the way cigarettes do? And it's not to scare people, but it's about awareness, isn't it? It's about being able to make conscious decisions. And it's about
informed decisions as well.
Yeah.
Informed. I think what is really inspiring to me about your story and how open you've been today is that you've taken such a traumatic life experience and you've not used it to kind of identify you as a victim of this trauma or a sufferer of this trauma. You've actually you've reframed it and you've taken agency over it rather than it taking control over you. You've used it as a way to inspire yourself, move yourself forward, inspire other people. So many people will take different elements of your story and think, oh yeah, I can resonate with that. And so you almost kind of creating your own community within that. In that, you're inspiring them, which they will go and inspire other people then because they'll be better wives, partners, colleagues because of the work that you're now doing to kind of raise awareness, improve your mental and physical health through the yoga and the breath work. And I really admire the fact that you've not used it so much as a flag to wave as, oh, this has happened to me, blah, blah, blah. You're like, this has happened. And now I'm going to use that now to propel me. And you're almost taking your sister's memory and not letting it be in vain. Like taking that, I'm getting a bit choked now, but taking that and thinking, no, I'm not going to let the guilt that you were saying you were feeling, the guilt that's like flipping it. It's like, no, I'm not, I don't want to feel guilt. I want to empower people. And that's what you're doing now with this. Like people are going to listen to this, resonate on different levels. Oh, what's breath work? Okay, that might help them with the depression, with their anxiety. You don't know, but you're putting it out there and you're allowing yourself to be so vulnerable in your story and in your experience that is so much far reaching than I think you can imagine. So more power to you for that. Honestly, I really admire you for that and appreciate you being so honest and open and vulnerable with us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm a little bit, I think, speechless. No, I really, I'm so thankful that you've had me on the show today. Everything that you've just said is just, it's hard to hear because you don't think of yourself in that way. But I knew I had to do something positive in her memory. Otherwise, I actually, where would I have been? And grief and loss is so hard already to deal with. And then that situation, those circumstances, that just makes it harder. And I think anybody out there who's struggling with wanting to take the first step towards change, and it is, you do need support. You do need to reach out to somebody. Like, don't be afraid to say something, but then you do need to find the right people. That's a really key thing in this whole thing as well as your environment. And I think it's just, we're all creatures of habit, aren't we? So you two, you've been on your sobriety journey for a while now. Mine's been 2.5 years. And I won't ever drink again because, like I said, I see it so differently now.
And I think it's so important, like your message as well. Obviously, you've summarized, and captured that so beautifully, Lisa, and thank you for sharing everything with us, Kat. But I think what is so important is the message is like finding your community and finding somewhere where you feel that you can belong with people.
Yeah.
But ones that are going to give you those positive habits.
Yeah.
But I think your message has been so powerful and strong for people who may be struggling with addiction, but also people who haven't been struggling, but maybe have no awareness. So you say, your eyes were completely open when you went into a bar. And I think so many people in society, their eyes aren't open and they can't see that the damage that alcohol can do. Yeah. And hopefully listening to your story, it's just going to open some more eyes and let people see it differently.
Yeah. And it takes work, if you're in any way wanting to change anything, to create new habits, it takes work. And self-care is hard. It's not meant to just be, okay, self-care can be putting on a face mask, but self-care can also be saying, no, I need to go and do this difficult thing to look after myself.
Be the change you want to see.
Yeah, and it takes sometimes like 3 months it's around 3 months for a new habit to embed and become a new behaviour. So just coming back to that point, like if you are that person who is trying to change out there and you do need that help, like you've said, reach out, find a new community, but also, if there's a really bad habit that you're trying to move away from, find a new thing that will help you replace that to make it become more automated. And Alcohol Change UK, they put on tips for cutting down on alcohol. They have online groups as well where you can just sign up, you can volunteer for things, you can meet people online. And then obviously with my yoga, shameless plug, but if you want to come to my yoga class, it's Yoga Up UK. But I also advocate things like breath work now with cold water plunging. So cold water therapy helps you deal with trauma, release of stress. And that's something that has really, really helped me release the trauma and heal. And I never thought that, again, that'd be something I'd be drawn to. It's not particularly nice getting in that icy water, but it's one of the biggest things to help with trauma relief and stress relief. Now, it's not just a trend. It's an actual therapeutic thing that can help you. So there's so many more tools now.
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking at. We're in a completely different era of wellness. And I have had to live through that. And I needed to pay her memory respect and pay my sister Paulette the respects that she's due. Because if I can help someone, then, I'll do that by spreading the word. So thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming in and sharing with us.
Such a powerful, powerful story. So thank you. And I know it will help so many people hearing that.
I hope so. Thank you.
The Sober Freedom podcast is hosted by Crystal Downsey and Lisa McGuinness. To leave comments, ask questions and interact with the show, follow @sober.freedom on Instagram. Please also subscribe, rate and leave comments wherever you listen to help us reach more people. The show is recorded at QPod Studios in Oldham and produced by me, Matt Dean, with video production from Eddie Corteen for QPod Productions. For more information, please visit kupod.co.uk.